Hey everyone, welcome to First Tuesdays with Heart. It's Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. First Tuesdays is sponsored by the Heart Peer Support Team in connection with the Resiliency and Justice Center in Las Vegas. Heart stands for Healing, Empowering, and Rebuilding Together. We're a peer support program for anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. Real quick, wanted to introduce you to the Heart team. Alice is a licensed professional counselor, certified professional coach, co-director of Heart. She's a Route 91 and UNLV support group facilitator. Jackie is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is the behavioral health program coordinator for the Resiliency and Justice Center. She's one of our original Heart coaches, and she facilitates the Route 91 and continuing the conversation with Heart support groups. And I'm Jill Winter. I'm co-director of Heart. I'm a Route 91 survivor. I assist Alex with the UNLV support groups and Jackie with the continuing the conversation with Heart support groups. So we always like to start with a meme, and Alice found this one, and it was so appropriate. Our bodies, when we try to sleep at night, wide awake, head mind racing, versus when you need to be awake during the meeting and we're really, really tired. And I don't know about you guys, but I've had this happen several times. So hopefully Alexis can give us some tools that will help us in the future with this. So as I mentioned, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome back Dr. Alexis Kennedy. She gave us this bio and she's really selling her self short with this. She is absolutely incredible. She is both a PhD and a JD, a forensic psychologist, burnout prevention specialist, founder of Compassion Recharge, and the list could go on and on. We could probably use the whole First Tuesdays to talk about everything she's done with her career. She draws on more than 3 decades of trauma research and translate complex neuroscience into practical, actionable strategies for resilience. Her presentations have reached audience across the United States and internationally, from legal and healthcare professionals to first responders and corporate teams. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you. Well, I'm diving into so many burnout. I say what I do is I teach people about the neuroscience of stress and how to reverse burnout because we're very hard on ourselves trying to figure out, why we're not operating the way we want to be operating, particularly if we've got stress in our background. And really understanding the physiology of our stress response releases so much of that self-blame and anxiety and pressure related to, the healing journey that people are going on. So I love being able to speak here. And I wasn't going to say I'm disappointed when I'm asked to do the sleep one again because I've done it a number of times. And I'm moving into a lot of new presentations on anxiety and the role of play and the gut brain connection in terms of stress. So, but I know that sleep is the single most important thing to talk about when you talk about physiology because it really falls into everything. So, for those of you who have heard the talk before, I try and add some new things, but some of it will feel familiar. However, it's the most important thing we can do for our entire life. So getting that reminder of why it's so important is good to help us nudge it up our priority list. So what we'll talk about today is start by thinking a bit about self-reflecting on what is your sleep pattern. Do you think you might be in a sleep crisis? Then I like to talk concretely about the health benefits of sleep. And there's so much that we're learning about it. It's really kind of amazing. A little bit about the science of our sleep patterns, because that's part of the story of understanding why it gets interrupted. Then I'll do 5 tips for improving your sleep, and then 5 cheats for working when you're sleep deprived. So I don't think when I've presented before, it wasn't quite this much information, so there will be some new things. But the first thing I like to do to make it personal is to get you to think about what does it feel like when you wake up in the morning? Do you look like this, stretching slowly with a big smile? Or are you passed out in your clothes from the night before? Because those may be different signs of how well you're regulating yourself and thinking about sleep. And a lot of people ask me how much is the right amount. So I'll ask the question, do you regularly get less than 7 hours of sleep a night? We used to think that 8 hours was the ideal, but a lot of research is showing that actually we can do quite well in 7 hours as long as it's consistent and that the start and the stop time are the same. But this has been something that has been on our radar as a major health crisis and concern. Before we went into our pandemic in 2020, the World Health Organization had actually declared an epidemic of sleep deprivation in the modern Western world because two-thirds of adults living in developed nations are not getting the 7 hours of sleep a night. And when they did this meta-analysis, looking at certain professions like healthcare workers and people in sort of high pressure positions, they found that people that are first responders, nurses, police officers, doctors, things like that, anyone with shift work, that they were reporting, diagnosable levels of unhealthy sleep disturbances. So if you feel like you're having trouble sleeping, you're not alone. It's very much a huge issue for the entire westernized nations. Um, Sleep and stress are actually interrelated, and we don't talk a lot about this. We tend to think, well, I got to look at my diet, I got to look at my sleep, I got to look at my emotions, and that's separate from sleep, from the stress, but they're all interrelated. And the reality is, the more stressed we are, the more it impairs our ability to sleep. So people that are on a healing journey, that have a history of stress, that are trying to process stress, anytime you have triggers and things like that, that is going to make it even harder to sleep. So that's an important thing to remember, that if you've been impacted, as everybody has with stress or working in a stressful job, helping people who've been impacted by a lot of stress, it makes sense that your body is going to be aware and not able to relax the same way we want it to. So your work conditions, who you're trying to help, if you have a job that's really difficult, if you're being asked to work a lot of overtime, changing your schedules, we get vicarious trauma working with people who've been through a lot of trauma, even if we're a trauma survivor ourselves, walking alongside other trauma victims is constantly giving our bodies that message that there's something up, something unsafe, and it's really sensitizing our fight or flight reactionary system. We also get our sleep interrupted when members of our family are going through things, either, our parents going through health concerns, our kids going through challenges. Life is rarely smooth sailing. There's always something going on. And anytime one of those things comes up, that's also going to rev up your alarm system in your body and deplete your ability to sleep. And then there's also personal history. Because I have taught for 21 years at the university level, I get a lot of kids that are 18 to 22, and for them, a lot of them that have childhood trauma, they hadn't really had time or the ability to think about it in high school. And then when they got to college and they got some independence, and sometimes they run into speed bumps like, bad dating decisions and not doing their schoolwork the way they think they should be doing, all of a sudden all the childhood stuff will bubble up, because if you've been pushing off trauma, once your body starts to feel safe, the stuff you've packed away and not thought about, all of a sudden it'll come bubbling up. So I know, having worked with trauma victims for so long, they'll come to me and say, I don't get it. My life was going so well. I was handling things, and all of a sudden all this stuff is back again. And that's really normal, because when your system is calm, that's when your brain says, okay, immediate emergency over. Let's open up the little box where we've tucked the stuff we don't want to think about away, and it'll come bubbling up. So often, when everything else in your life is calm, that's when your sleep will get really messed up, because your body is finally saying, okay, we've got enough resources now. Let's start processing the stuff that we've been avoiding. So sleep is really particularly important for people who are on any kind of healing journey. And it's going to go up and down based on what your brain and your body is doing during the day and what it's doing at night while you're sleeping. So, sleep has been described as the most powerful medicine for our body, but we're not taught that. We've sort of learned that we need to exercise and we need to eat good food, but rarely do we talk about sleep. And when you go to the doctor, we'll have like our little list of questions, but they don't often say, and how's your sleep and how much are you sleeping? Even when we go to the dentist, they don't ask things like that. But dentists should be asking, are you stopping breathing at night, looking for sleep apnea, looking for inflammation, looking for that stress? So there's been amazing research on how impactful it is, how much it changes everything from our emotions to our coping skills to our sense of humor to our ability to think creatively. But nobody can patent sleep. You can't turn it into a pill. So there's no businesses that are profiting off of sleep. Maybe a few companies that make money off of comfortable mattresses and things. But if it was something we could actually bottle, it would be the single highest selling medicine because it really is the most impactful. So on the flip side, the good news is now you know, and it's free. And we don't need a pharmaceutical company running ads telling us how important it is. We all sort of know that at a certain level. So the reason that sleep is so important is that your body does a lot of stuff when you're sleeping. People think, well, it's just wasted time. My students actually once made me a t-shirt that has a skull on the front and it says, I'll sleep when I'm dead, because I was always so busy. I was very proud of that. And in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have been because they were sort of pointing out that I was doing far too much. But when you don't sleep, when you don't prioritize sleep and you don't find a way to, give yourself all the resources to get a good night's sleep that we'll talk about, you're shortchanging your body. And our brains, when we sleep, are doing amazing things. So if you get less than 6 hours sleep, you're not going to go through the full cycle of different types of sleep. And there's different, they call it sleep spindles or sleep architecture. And your brain will actually go from, um, there's sort of like relaxed. If anyone has an Apple Watch, it'll track things for you. But there's deep sleep, which is when you're basically your body is shut off and it's that collapsed sleep. But then you have REM sleep, which is when you have the rapid eye movement. So if you see babies and their eyes are moving, that's what that is. We need both the deep sleep, that's when we do most of our body healing, but we also need the REM sleep. And if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're sleeping very lightly, your body may be relaxing, but your brain isn't getting to do all of the stuff it needs to do. And one of the things that's amazing, there's really cool research out on this, is that our brains have to flush at night. And the way that our brains work is they send neurotransmitters, sort of chemicals throughout our brain to send messages back and forth. And not all of those neurochemicals get used at night, and we have to flush them out. So if not, we're going to be groggy. So if you've pulled an all-nighter and you feel really kind of dopey the next day and have trouble making decisions, that is the excess of neurotransmitters that didn't get flushed out. But our brain doesn't have a pump. Like our body has the heart that is our sort of pump. So what they've just discovered is, and this is brand new research from the past year and a half, is that when you're in REM sleep, when you're dreaming, your body's actually going slightly into fight or flight and out of fight or flight, which means that you sort of inflame and then relax, inflame and relax. Do you ever have dreams where you wake up and you think, well, that was strange. I dreamt I was unloading groceries or solving things like activity? That action in your dreams is actually making your brain plump up and drop down. And that's how we clear the neurotransmitters out. So if you don't get your REM sleep, you're not actually flushing your brain. So your brain is going to have a buildup of the unused neurotransmitters. So we knew that REM sleep was important for creativity, which is where we would make different connections. Because when we go to sleep, we get rid of the sort of busy tasks that we're focusing on, and our brain has to decide what it's going to move from short-term memory during the day into long-term memory. And without the constraints of worrying or sort of focused thinking, that's when our brain will make really good connections and do the creative work. So sometimes you'll be working to solve a problem and you just can't figure it out. You'll go to sleep. The next morning, you wake up with a solution. That was your brain actually being creative while you sleep. So if you don't get enough sleep, you can't be creative and you can't make those connections the same way. And, we need to sleep to be able to store the memories. So, I tell my students you need to sleep so that you can remember. It's better to get a good night's sleep before an exam than to stay up all night cramming because you're not going to remember what you crammed and your brain's going to be full of unused neurotransmitters. But our brain actually reinforces what we're learning while we're sleeping. And this one's kind of trippy because people who are trying to learn like piano or doing sports, they can practice it, practice it, practice it. But if they find once you go to bed and you take a break from practicing, when you wake up in the morning, you'll have that muscle memory. So our bodies actually rehearse at night and our brain runs through what we were doing. So there's just so many things that our brains are doing that we don't have to worry about while we're sleeping. But when we wake up in the middle of the night, we're depriving our brain of that sort of default mode of thinking, and that's going to be a problem. So sorry, I got really excited about brain and sleep, but it really is amazing the stuff we do. I think most people know that not getting enough sleep also takes a toll on your physical system because there's a lot of things that we have to do at night that if we're not getting sleep, if we're only sleeping 2 or 3 hours, or we're pulling a bunch of all-nighters in a row, we're not giving our body the time to reset. So our blood pressure will drop at night because during the day, every time we have a stress moment, our heart will race a little bit. It's when we're asleep that our bodies really get to do that relax, really in sort of the deep sleep. So if you are not getting enough sleep, this is why the World Health Organization called it a pandemic. Lack of sleep increases all our chronic diseases. It doesn't give our heart that break and that chance to flush out. And, our cardiovascular system needs that flush. Um, our digestive systems don't get to flush. I'll talk about in a second. And our healing happens at night because when you're on alert and you're in fight or flight, we kind of have two modes, the fight or flight, and then we have the rest and relaxation and digestion. If we're if we're pulling an all-nighter, it changes the way our bodies are digesting and it doesn't give our body that chance to go into the healing mode. So inflammation increases as your sleep decreases. So everything that is sort of our biggest killers in terms of cardiovascular and cancer and all those things, they are aggravated by sleep. And when we get to the point of dis-ease and being sick, the doctors will say, well, reduce your stress and get good sleep. But they don't really connect those dots for us that that's the important time for the healing. And that's the time that we need to really let our body go through the changes that it needs to do. So hugely important. And we underestimate it. And a lot of people take pride in the fact that they're not sleeping, particularly if you're, a first responder doing shift work or things like that. They'll often say, oh, I'm okay with not sleeping. I've done this for years. But drowsy driving actually causes hundreds of thousands of fatal accidents. Well, hundreds of thousands of accidents, not all of them fatal. The estimate is that one person per hour dies due to fatigue-related driver error in the United States every year. So this is a serious problem that people are underestimating how serious it is. But here, I'll end with the scariest one. Not sleeping makes you fat. And there's a real logic to that because it's when we sleep, we need that break in digestion, which is overnight. That's what we call breakfast, the break fast. Our body needs a chance to process, have it go through the digestive system and get the nutrients and the stuff that we need. And if you stay up all night, pull an all-nighter, we stay hungry because our body's sort of out of sync. And then we tend to make poor decisions while we're staying up late and eating things that aren't good for us. So it interferes with our feeling of satiation. It messes up our hunger signals. But if we aren't getting enough sleep, the body will rush through the digestive process. And if we're not giving it the time to do that proper analysis and get the best things out of our food, if it's rushed through our digestive system, what our body does is, I'm not sure what this is, if it's good or bad. And so it'll tuck it away in fat cells. So it actually, when they do studies on healthy college students and then do mean things to them and wake them up every 3 hours in a lab experiment, their blood sugar actually changes to the point of being pre-diabetic after just 2 nights of disrupted sleep. So we can actually measure how quickly that interruption in sleep changes the way that our body handles what we're trying to process. And unfortunately, it's um, it's not good. And our microbiome, which again is very much tied to our stress neurotransmitters, most of them are made actually in our gut. If we're not giving our body the time to reset and digest and do the best job it can, it's going to increase our stress as well. So it's tied both to the physical and the brain, the entire system in the brain. So if you want to learn more about the science of sleep, I really recommend Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. I think he's got a new TEDx talk out too. If you Google him, look him up on YouTube. But he has one sentence in his book, Why We Sleep, that I love. Sleep is the single most effective thing we can do to reset our brain and body health every day. Mother Nature's best effort yet at contra death. So it is the single most powerful thing that keeps us alive or keeps us, away from things that will kill us. So that anyway, sorry, that was science and geeky, but I get really excited about the brain and why this is so important. So it's not just about the amount of time, it's also the quality of sleep. So you want to ask yourself, do you wake up feeling nearly as tired as you were when you went to bed? We need to look at what is our sleep like? And you can use tools like an Apple Watch, which will give you, how much deep sleep you have, how much REM sleep you have. We can't actually force that. Like I can't lie down at night and say, okay, I'm going to get my 2 hours of REM sleep and exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes of deep sleep tonight. Like we just don't have that control over our bodies. But what we can see is if we're repeatedly not getting enough deep sleep, if our sleep is very much that shallow sleep with a lot of awake spikes, then we know, okay, this is starting to impact my body and the way that I think. So I'm going to have to find a way to prioritize my sleep because it's going to have that cascading effect to my body and brain. So sleep, you know, having undiagnosed sleep apnea, which is on the rise, particularly in the US, because it runs concurrently with our rise in obesity. Um, Lack of sleep, uh, all of those things sort of become inflammatory, which makes sleep apnea worse. Noise pollution, drinking too much alcohol before a night of sleep, all of these things can disrupt the quality of our sleep. And that's going to change, the spindles and what happens during our sleep. But it's also about the overall systems. Most people have heard of the circadian rhythm, which was kind of cool. All organisms have it, plants have it, which basically is that we have this internal clock that runs for 24 hours. We're not really paying attention to our circadian rhythm until we travel and we're out of time zone and we experience jet lag. But a lot of things that we can do day to day can give us essentially jet lag. So, for example, if you go to bed normally at 10 o'clock during the week, whatever your week is, and on the weekend you're like, I'm partying till 2 and sleeping in till 10, that actually can really boomerang because we're basically giving ourselves social jet lag by changing our schedules. So I know most people don't want to hear that. It's okay occasionally to sleep late, but just know when you're groggy, you're going to be better off sleeping slightly shorter and keeping your bedtime closer to your regular bedtime. Otherwise, Monday morning, when you're going back to your regular wake up time, if you've been sleeping in, I said wake up, I mean bedtime. Anyway, the point is when you shift your schedule for 2 or 3 days, it's like working shift work. It impacts you. And a lot of people don't think about that. They just want to stay up late on the weekends and sleep late. But you'll notice that it's just our bodies don't switch our internal time dial that fast. But it's not just circadian rhythm isn't just that internal clock. There's a lot of things that change daily. So our temperature will go up during the day and then drop right before bed. Our alertness actually recovers overnight and it's peaks in the morning and then decreases in the afternoons. That's why a lot of people know they have to do their deep thinking work in the morning and that they want to leave their easier tasks for 2 in the afternoon when their brain's kind of checked out. Uh, but interestingly, our coordination actually peaks around lunchtime. So they've gone back and looked at like Olympic medals, and people who set world records tend to be around 12, 1 o'clock during the day. So our brains wake up first, and then our body coordination comes, and then by afternoon, everything's starting to fall apart as our sleepiness will change. Our blood pressure as well changes during the day. And so, there's people will talk about a lot of heart attacks happening when people get out of bed. That's because your blood pressure drops at night. And then, if you zip into things too quickly, that could be a problem. So it's really kind of fascinating how little we know about how all of these systems work and how not talking about when we go to bed and how we go to bed and how to prioritize sleep is causing us to fight against all these different things. So consistent, I don't have this, but one of the important things they've research has now shown, even if you can only get 5 hours sleep a night, if you go to bed at midnight and get up at 5 a.m. every day, having a short, consistent period is better than doing like 10 to 5 during the week and then, midnight to 8 on the weekends. They're saying that your body is actually going to do better with shorter sleep periods as long as it's always the same notch of sleep. So consistency is actually more important than length of sleep. That said, I'm not telling you to just sleep 5 hours, but the research has shown that change in start and stop time just is messing with all of our rhythms. Our body just can't keep up to that. So um, bedtimes are an important thing. All right, so tips for sleeping. I have five that I want to cover. And the first one, a lot of people don't want to hear about, which is have a routine and a set bedtime. Because we're like, I don't want to set bedtime. That's what I had when I was a kid. I'm a grown up now. I can stay up and watch Netflix till 2 in the morning. There is real truth that having the routine means you're not fighting your body and you're not fighting your brain, and you're going to have the best sleep. And that was why we had that as kids. And for those of you with young kids, we have to settle them down. We say, it's bedtime. Okay, get in your jammies. Okay, I'll read you a book. Like, we wind them down. We take away their phones. We give them that structure. And what that means is that their nervous system gets to regulate, their decision making gets to drop, and they know that it's quiet time, and they actually give themselves that really important message that allows the melatonin to come and all of the different signals to come to say, all right, it's time to go to sleep. As grown-ups, though, our bedtime routine seems to be with our laptop in bed and writing down to-dos and remembering the things we haven't done. That is not a routine that calms our nervous system. And it's unfortunate because if we're really busy, or if we're really wanting to avoid thinking about things that are difficult, staying busy is a good way to displace the things that are uncomfortable. But going until you collapse in exhaustion means you're not going to get the right quality of sleep. And it means that you're sort of pushing off what you need. So there's no right or wrong way to do a routine. Any routine will be good. So some people recommend meditation. Not everybody finds meditation safe if you're in, trauma healing. So if you want to do meditation, but meditation makes you anxious or nervous, I'd recommend going on YouTube and doing a guided meditation where they're talking and saying, feel your feet, feel your ankles, feel your calf, because that gives you enough of a task to relax your body without allowing a lot of the sort of trauma thoughts that can come shooting in and stress you out. So, but I mean, if you love just meditating or you have your own that you make, that's just the research around that's incredible. Reading a book, doing something that is unplugged is a really impactful thing. Most of us don't have books anymore. We don't pick up the books. I'm guilty that most of my books are like science books I want to read. So sometimes you need to just pick the fluff or the reread fiction, or do something that is good for shutting down your brain. Unfortunately, when you choose, instead of reading and you say, well, I'm just going to go on Instagram and scroll for a while, we're very bad at keeping it to 5 to 10 minutes. All of a sudden, it's an hour later, it's 2 hours later. And that dopamine hit of the distraction and the unpredictability of whether you're going to get good material or bad material, that keeps us addicted. And we do that revenge scrolling. This is my time to myself. I need half an hour. I'm gonna look for cat videos or whatever it is. For me, it's knitting or sourdough recipes, whatever the videos are that are coming up. We just aren't very good at stopping it at the 5 to 10 minutes, or just, making a proper routine. So if you do it, you can set an alarm. That's one way to do it, but it's much better to do something that is um, tactile, physical, like reading a book and doing that, or having a cup of tea. That's another one, that just the routine of making it and drinking it. We don't spend enough time being bored. We don't spend enough time just sitting and being in the moment, because we always have our phone. As soon as we have a second, even if we've made ourselves a cup of tea, we pull out the phone and start scrolling and check things. So having a cup of tea where you're just staring out the window, one of the most powerful things you can do for your nervous system to let it know it's okay to wind down for bed. So bedtime routine's number one. Number two is that we have to chill out. We have to change our temperature. And that's tied back to our circadian rhythms, that our body, our hypothalamus in particular, is watching for that drop in body temperature that initiates sleep. And there's a couple of ways to do it. One is to actually make your room colder, which a lot of people don't think about. But some of the best sleep people imagine is when you're somewhere cold and the air is crispy and you're under a nice warm comforter. That change in temperature is one of the most powerful messages to your brain. But the other one is to take a warm bath. And people think that the warm bath is what is like warming you up and helping. But what happens is when you're in a warm bath, your body has to drop its core temperature. So it sends blood to your hands and to your feet and to your face, which is why you get red and flushed. And that is, that basically is a temperature control. So it's not happening while you're in the bath. It's when you step out of the bath and all of a sudden you get that sharp change in temperature. It's that quick, um, sort of accelerated drop in temperature that is a signal to your brain that it's now that point in the circadian rhythm and time to go to sleep. So that's either keeping your room 65 to 68 degrees is supposed to be the ideal temperature for sleeping. Unfortunately, as places like Vegas and that head into the summer, it's hard to get your air conditioning that low without bankrupting yourself. But we know intuitively when we're too hot, we can't sleep, which is why we wake up in the middle of the night and our arms are out of the blankets and our feet are out of the blankets. That's your body trying to keep that regulated temperature down. So, yeah, if you can't keep it super cold, just give up the blankets sooner, sleep with just a sheet, use lighter pajamas because our body really wants that change in temperature. So another thing we do that kind of destroys our ability to sleep is that when we're thinking about reading for 5 to 10 minutes, we're thinking of reading on a Kindle or reading on our phone or our iPad, um, you know, scrolling while we're still in bed, using our computer in bed. Unfortunately, that is sending the exact wrong message to our brain because when our brain is looking at that little screen, the phone or computer, whatever the blue screen is, that is mimicking daylight. And our bodies and our brains are looking for that drop in light to let us know that it's time to go to sleep. And so we now have this artificial sun that's available 24/7. And that is a real problem that is messing up the signals to our brain. So some of the research says, the best thing is to plug your phone in another room, to um, maybe switch to a light bulb beside your bed. And if you can put a red or a orange light bulb in there, that's going to mimic the sundown and really send that powerful message to your body that it's time to wind down and go to sleep. Some people say, well, I use blue light glasses to block it. It's not as effective as changing to a light bulb and reading something in paper, or if you don't want to do that, simply turning off all your lights and putting on an audiobook with a timer for 20 minutes so that you're no longer sending that light into your eyes and you're sending your brain that message. And the biggest mistake we do is often we'll have our phone beside us and in the middle of the night we'll pick it up and go, oh, 3:30. It's too early for me to get up. I have to go back to sleep. But when we actually look at our phone to see the time, that is sending this really powerful message to your brain, sun's come up. It's time to get up. So looking at our phone when we have those middle of the night wake ups are one of the worst things that we can do because we're sending a really powerful message to our brain that it's daylight and it's time to start getting up and time to let the sleep mechanisms drop off. So a lot of people, my fourth tip is to try and make your room as dark as possible. And I have my son was always very sensitive to any light. He had to have blackout curtains, and if the clock was bright, he would whine. And I thought he was kind of a little bit sucky about it, to be honest. But research is now showing that our skin actually reads the levels of light. So the light detection, even if you have an eye mask on, if there's a lot of brightness, your body is getting the message that the sun is coming up and that, the daytime is changing. So some people can sleep with full lights on, but if you want to, if you're someone who does wake up at 3 and you have trouble sort of going back to sleep, if you cover your alarm clock, if you put little stickers over all the charging lights, all of those things do distract us. And covering any of the electronic device indicators can make a really big difference in helping us stay calm and get that message back to our brain that it's still night, it's okay to go back to sleep. There's nothing worth getting up for. But if none of that works, and you still wake up in the middle of the night, one of the worst things we do is just lie in bed for like 2, 3 hours, tossing and turning, saying, okay, if I go to sleep now, I'll get 3 more hours of sleep. If I go to sleep now, I'll get 2.5 hours more sleep. We just do the mental calculations. We are sort of pairing the restlessness with lying in bed. So actually, the best thing you do is get up out of bed and go to a chair, a comfortable chair, a couch, maybe in your room or nearby, and pick up a magazine or listen to some piano music, or maybe listen to a really boring Audible book. And you'll find that your sleepiness, the neurotransmitters we need that tell us that our body still needs more sleep, will come back when you're sitting. So then when you go back to bed, you'll fall asleep quicker. But we're not really taught to get up and change our state because we think getting out of bed is going to make it worse. But staying in bed and tossing and turning for a couple of hours is actually sending it's worse than that. So we don't want to get out of bed. It's cold. But again, it's that change in temperature, the sitting upright. You realize that you're actually sleepier than you thought you were. And when you go back to bed, your body's more relaxed and your nervous system's more regulated, and you're more likely to go back to sleep. So those are my 5 tips for getting to sleep and staying asleep. But not all of us can. So here's 5 tips for working when you're sleep deprived. The first one I get asked a lot about is, are naps okay? And short naps can be good. My dad used to come home and like he would fall asleep like that, snore for 10 minutes and then be wide awake. It was the weirdest thing. There was no timer. He just did his power nap, sometimes before dinner, sometimes after dinner. I'm not quite as an efficient a napper as that. But there are on apps like calm.com where they'll run like a 26-minute nap. So it has a sort of quiet music. And then when your 26 minutes are up, birds start to come louder and that will wake you up. So I use that one because if you sleep more than 26 to 30 minutes, you get into deeper sleep cycles. And then what'll happen is when you wake up, you'll have that sleep inertia and you'll be kind of dopey and sort of out of it. And it impacts your cognition and your ability to function. So if you're going to nap, do it short naps. And if you're someone who has trouble falling asleep, um, maybe cut out the naps. Some people will overnap and that impacts their ability to sleep at night. But again, there's no right or wrong. You just want to figure out what's going to work best for you. If you do nap too long, or if you do get really, really drowsy as our sleep pressure builds during the day, sometimes in the afternoon, we'll get that really strong feeling of not being able, we'll feel like we can fall asleep sitting up and being super drowsy. If you take an ice cube and hold it in your hand, that invokes the dive reflex, which increases your sort of oxygen. So it's actually one of the quickest ways to get out of that drowsiness. If you wake up from a nap where you've slept too long and you're just in that like brain fuddle, going to the sink and running cold water over your wrists will make a huge difference. So it's one of the best ways to wake yourself up. If you know that you need to keep going or you want to get rid of that drowsiness, just getting up, moving, going to the sink or going to get an ice cube, it really can make a really quick and impactful difference. Most of us turn to caffeine, but we have to be careful because if we, turn to the caffeine in the afternoon, which is when our sort of drowsiness is really starting to build, caffeine has a 6-hour half-life. So if you have it at 2, 6 hours later, it's still like you just had a half a cup of coffee. So it's going to be something that may negatively impact either your ability to fall asleep or your ability to stay asleep. So caffeine's a very powerful drug. It blocks our drowsiness. So that's why we love it, because it makes us feel more awake. But it's not actually giving you energy. It's just blocking that drowsiness. And when the caffeine wears off, all the drowsiness we've been ignoring kind of comes flooding in, and that's why you're sort of super exhausted. So if you can do caffeine right, do it in the morning, time it so that it's sort of out of your system by the time you want the drowsiness, and that's the end of the day. But if you're someone who's like, it's 4 o'clock, I'm not going to make it to 5 without a coffee, just know you might be paying for it later in the evening. So sometimes it's better to do the ice water or to get up and move or to dance for a minute or to play a angry emo rock song and mouth the words to yourself if you're at home, sing at the top of your lungs. Those things will sort of clear the drowsiness without the hangover that caffeine has. The other thing, sometimes if you're working on like a dull thing, you'll try and sort of say, I can stay awake, I can stay awake, I can stay awake. You'll say that over and over. That actually lulls you to sleep. That's one of the worst thing, having an unchallenging activity. So when you've got that drowsiness, if you're trying to look for an alternative to caffeine, getting up and going and getting yourself a glass of water, that change in pace, that movement, doing a flight of stairs or walking to where you're getting that glass of water, that is actually going to change your state and wake you up. So, movement, having a conversation with someone, listening to an upbeat song, all of those things are going to be more impactful than just trying to stay. If you are falling asleep at your desk, get up and walk around for 5 minutes. It makes a big difference. And then the final tip is that if you are in a long shift and you have the ability to work with someone else, that also helps us keep out of drowsiness because our bodies mirror other people. And if someone is moving, that little bit of that attention, noticing that they're typing, is actually going to sort of redirect our brains so that we're being more attentive and sort of it's co-working actually can help you the research shows that having people working together where they're noticing each other, where they're not all isolated, reduces errors and reduces the sort of sleepiness that people feel. If you work from home, there's actually clubs you can do. A lot of people with ADHD or people that are neurodivergent, where you log into the club and it's all these people working virtually. There's something about seeing other people on screens and knowing they can see you raises your attention level and helps you sort of focus on a task, but also works if you're sleepy as well. So yes, being able to stay awake. So sometimes getting up and going to talk to a colleague, it's to give us that break we need to sort of reset and refresh. So we do need to take care of ourselves. Hopefully I didn't go too quickly. I think I talked quickly as I always do because I get excited about the science behind this. Um, and it's important to remember this is free, it's available. You can do it anywhere, anytime. Well, pretty much anywhere, anytime, not while you're driving, but it is something that is one of the first things we push to the side when it is actually the most potent thing that you can do. So we are talking beforehand. Okay, this is the reason I had 4 hours of sleep last night. This is Fraser. He is 7 months old. And yesterday he unfortunately had to get fixed because he had a complication in his abdomen. So he is very miserable and has a big cone on, and we're giving him painkillers and drugs. And I stayed up all night listening to him go like the dogs do. So we're gonna have times where we can't sleep. But for the most part, it's yeah, just when it doesn't go well, know you're not alone. Know that you're not doing anything wrong, that your body's not trying to break you. A lot of these things are just your body trying to protect you. And I guess I don't think I mentioned this. Some of the new research is showing that people with trauma and people that are in chronic stress, when you have a higher cortisol level before you go to sleep, that's part of why you wake up at 3 in the morning and can't get back to sleep. Because it what we do is we relax during the night, and then as we get to sort of early morning, our cortisol levels will naturally start to rise, sort of like getting us ready for the day. But if you started with elevated cortisol levels and you're not getting enough sleep to sort of flush it out, when that cortisol sort of starting to climb for the next day hits, then you get like wide awake at 3 or 4 in the morning. So the more you can do in the evening to not watch the news, to do something calming, to have that cup of tea, to not be overstimulated, to do the bedtime routine, the more you drop your cortisol before you go to sleep, the more likely you are to not have that 3 a.m., 4 a.m. wake up. And we don't always connect those dots. But, when you're processing trauma, when your brain and your body and your heart has to do the work of, recovering and finding your new normal from difficult things, know that you're going to have some nights where you're up at 3 or 4 and you're not broken. It's not wrong. That's your body's alarm system trying to protect you, sort of saying, what's going on? And even though you're not unsafe in that moment. It's just your body being really protective. So the things you can do to calm it down. One of the best things that works with the 3 or 4 a.m. as well is to do something that pushes the rumination out without being overly stimulating. So if you start at 300 and count backwards by threes, that's just enough of a mental task that you focus on it, but it pushes out the sort of stress thoughts. And most people either completely fall apart with the math or get relaxed enough to be able to get their body back into that relaxed state. So if you want to learn more about stress and the neuroscience of stress, I am on Instagram as Dr. Alexis Recharge. My website is recharge.how, but I also post the same material to YouTube. So on YouTube, I'm Dr. Alexis Recharge, no dots, or you just type in stress decoder and you will find me there. So hopefully there's some questions and share.
That was wonderful as always. Thank you. So I actually have a question. I'm one of those weird people that cannot take a short nap. I feel absolutely awful if I
Yeah.
don't sleep for at least an hour. Do you have any suggestions, or is it just I try not to nap?
Well, listen to your body. If the hour makes a world of difference and you feel like you can be sharp and do whatever, then do it. But notice if it's throwing off your bedtime routine. Because sometimes we'll have like a nap at 4 and they'll be
Yeah.
like, great, I worked from like 7 to midnight. But when you're changing your bedtime routine, you get the boomerang later. So really, it's just you noticing um, people have different circadian rhythms. Teenagers, you know, when we wake them up at 6, 7 in the morning, that's like someone waking us up at 3 or 4 in the morning because they stay up late and they need to sleep in late. And unfortunately, our school system doesn't recognize that. And then as we age, for a lot of people, the circadian rhythm moves backwards. So that's why you fall asleep during the nightly news. You need to go to bed earlier, but you wake up earlier. So I always laugh when I'm in Vegas and you go down to work out at the gym at a hotel and there's all these people in their 80s at the machines. And I'm like, have they been up all night or are they just so excited they were up at 4 in the morning? So we have different chronotypes. So really it's just noticing if there's a boomerang to your nap. So if it is impacting you, then I wouldn't use it. But if it's working for you, go for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Hmm. I love the tip that you gave about rumination and how you talked about, not it's kind of like not getting mad at yourself because I think a lot of us get mad at ourselves at 3 a.m.,
Yeah.
and it is that tendency is to feel broken. And the way you said it is just, okay, body, you're trying to protect me. It's okay. You're safe. Let's do something fun and start counting back from 300, you know? So, like, totally reframing it because that 3 o'clock can come and you can be pretty startled.
Mhm.
And that is hard when you're going through that trauma healing,
Yeah.
with the heart racing and everything. So, the way that you talked about it, like, okay, this is normal. It's okay. You're not broken. You're going to be okay. And then give yourself something to do
Yeah.
is really beautiful. And if you can't go back to sleep, to get up rather than being frustrated in bed.
Mhm.
But get up and get bored is the tricky thing, right? Instead of
Yeah.
like, I'm going to go reorganize whatever.
Yeah, puzzles are good. Something that is a little bit of attention. And when you're falsely awake, like when you're accidentally awake, your ability to focus on a puzzle very quickly lets you know that you're actually more tired than you realize. So um, that's
Oh.
that's a good one. But reading a book, reading poetry, reading not news, because that gets us revved up, and not family related stuff. Because often we'll wake up because we wake up agitated from a dream. Someone said something, or we did something, or we're reliving something, or we're, processing something. And I think everybody's had that. Like they wake up and they're mad at someone who did something in their dream. It's like, wait, I didn't do that. But that is our brain making those connections, and disappointment and hurt comes bubbling up, and then it's tied to a person, and we may transpose it or whatever. But the reality is, you wake up in fight or flight. Your heart is racing. You feel like you've been injured. You feel like you've been harmed. So, we have to get that message back. So, YouTube has amazing instrumental, and Spotify and that they have instrumental piano mixes. If you put on classical music, that's enough to help send that message to your brain that I'm calm, that I'm safe. So listening to a bit of music is another one that really helps. Um,
Mhm.
I guess if you're a TV person putting on, I was gonna say C-SPAN, something that's really boring normally, but that hasn't necessarily been boring lately. Um, something that is there are a lot of, 8-hour meditations on YouTube for free. So putting that on and listening to someone with that super calm voice talking about
Hmm.
beautiful rainbows and futures, even if it's not something you necessarily believe or subscribe to, the tone, the speed of that will help your nervous system regulate.
Hmm. That's really great.
I've also found using frequencies for sleep helps me. Like I have Amazon Music and I'll use the binaural beats for sleep.
Mhm.
And so I have that on all night and it's for the most part it helps me. And the other thing I do if I wake up and I can't go back to sleep is I'll come downstairs and lay on the couch because
Mhm.
sometimes just changing my location helps.
Yeah. And sometimes if you grab a pet and you give them a snuggle and they fall asleep in your lap, it's sort of that you've got that mirroring of your nervous systems that can help calm you as well. Not all sound frequencies work for all people. There's certain ones that will trigger stress. So that I yeah, you have to find the ones that calm you. Not all of them will be good.
Right.
All right. Jackie's raised her hand.
Let me unmute. I did. First of all, I've used your technique since we started and I love it. I love the not looking at what time it is when you wake up. I'm at the age where I wake up in the middle of the night. So I've shared with Jill and a few folks, I read this technique to fall back asleep. And I'm trained in EMDR, and the technique was sort of replicating. So if once you lay back down, I get up, come back to bed, and that's when the ruminations, I'm really good at would start. So I read this about a month ago where you close your eyes and you replicate, the eye movements with your eyes closed slowly, not fast, but just 10 times. So this would be one, two. And after 10, then you focus on your breathing. Breathe in and then focus a lot on the exhale.
Mhm.
After a little bit, if you're still not, go back to the 10. Not only and it took me about maybe 2 or 3 times to use this, but not only do I fall back asleep, but what I found interesting is I fall back asleep hard, like really.
Yeah.
Um, so I've found it to be helpful. I haven't found it to be as effective, even though I've used it a few times to fall asleep initially, but it's when you wake up and then go back to sleep. Have you heard of that? And is it
I
just
have. Yeah, no, what it is that you're able to drop your cortisol and sort of drop the alarm that is coming
correct?
to you
Yeah,
from
that's what
sleep
they said.
or from
Hmm.
things. I've seen someone recommend where you, with your eyes closed, you look up to the side, down to the side, up. So like
Oh,
do
like a
a
diamond
diamond.
shape almost.
And
Okay.
then another one I learned in meditation, which I loved, is I picture my third eye here, and then I imagine an infinity symbol going around my eyes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's just enough of a visual exercise for my brain where I'm trying to picture
Gotcha.
doing that pattern that
Yeah.
helps calm the thoughts as well. And so any which way you do it, I mean the exhale is good because a longer exhale again, triggers the vagus nerve and helps us move into rest and relaxation instead of out of fight or
Hmm.
flight. And I mean, you could do anything, rubbing your arms is a self-comfort thing as well. Anything that just gets that message to your brain that you're safe. It's not time to get up. It's not time to be worrying about
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you is the right thing.
Yeah, it was, I'll try and find the article real quick, unless Jill, you have it handy. Okay, I'll find it. It was just a quick, like, Upworthy kind of article.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. It works for me. But I also find what I really like is I know I fall back asleep deep because when I wake up, I go, Oh, well, I feel like I've been asleep for 10 years, so it's kind of cool. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'll try and find that. Thank you.
Yeah, that means your nervous system is calmed enough. You could drop into the deep sleep because deep sleep normally happens in the first half of sleep, and the REM is more prevalent in our second half of sleep. But if you do have that relaxation, and get that extra bonus deep sleep, that's awesome because that's your body getting a second round of flushing and healing.
Um, I've tried Jackie's the method. She mentioned that it worked for her, and I have tried it, and it works for me. And I love what you're reinforcing that it's such an individual thing because Jill and I share what's working, what's not working, and she'll say, try these, binary beats, and I'm like, I want to scratch my eyes out, you
Yeah.
know. Like,
Yeah, they
why
don't
would
work
you
for
tell
me.
me to do that? And then I have to, regulate, do something else to regulate. Even talking about it makes makes me more intense. So if I'm ever drowsy, that's what I'm going to think about. But a lot of people who are going through trauma, um, they can't sleep, and so they take some medications, and so medications like trazodone or whatever. Does do you have any knowledge about how that affects REM sleep or sleep in general?
Most medicines, anything that's a system depressant, is going to come at a cost. Every time we take medicine, it may help you fall asleep, but it may make the quality of sleep more shallow. So people become so desperate at not sleeping, they want to take medicine that knocks them out, but it's not going to be the same quality of sleep as being able to do it ourselves. That said, there's going to be periods in your life where you need that medicinal boost. Melatonin, for example, for some people it works, for others it doesn't. A lot of people love weed gummies to fall asleep. We don't have enough research on what it's doing to our sleep spindles, but it's since it's not fully regulated, not fully researched, so it's going to be a trade-off, and
Hmm.
any sleep is better than no sleep, but
Hmm.
getting addicted to having to have medicine to fall asleep is going to be problematic in the long run as well. So you're better off doing exercise and a meditation and a cup of tea, in terms of
Hmm.
getting that full range of sleep spindles.
Okay, all right, and yet, like what you said, at the same time, you might have a season or a period of time where the medicine helps because no sleep. I mean,
Mhm.
getting sleep is
Yeah,
better than no sleep at all.
yeah.
And yeah, maybe not an either or, but a both and.
Mm. Yeah, the cooling blanket, I saw someone just commented, those are awesome, which is totally working with your circadian rhythm and cooling you down. And, women, hormones, menopause, we go through a lot of changes, and we don't realize how important that temperature is. And I mean, the throes of menopause is going to throw off sleep because our hormones are doing such wacky things. We're just it's crazy. So one minute you're cold, the next minute you're in a sweat puddle, the next minute you're cold again. So just knowing that it's a change, it doesn't last forever. And I went through menopause at the start of COVID. So every hot flash I had, I'm like, do I have a fever? Do I have COVID? It was like totally the wrong time to be going through that. So yeah, on the other side, the sleeping did cool off. But it's yeah, there for some people it's weighted blankets increases that sense of safety as well. And someone else said gentle stretching of your legs with breathing. That's awesome because you're focusing on your body, you're listening to your body and sending that message to your nervous system that it's time to relax, to let go.
I have found I have my ceiling fan on. I have a fan next to like on my nightstand. And I also a couple years ago got this thing called a bed jet, and it sits at the bottom of your bed and pumps cool air in at your feet. So I've
Nice.
got it coming from all directions. Plus I sleep with it cooler. So it's like that's the only way I can sleep anymore. So and it's I keep it within that range that you mentioned. So that was
Yeah.
good to hear. But I think as I've gotten older, it's it's more and more helpful, like you said.
Mhm.
There's hormones and everything.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Just keep
Had a,
trying.
yeah, I had a question. You mentioned the consistent sleep and wake time within like how many minutes? So if one night is 10, one night's 10:15, one night's
Oh,
10:30, is that still
no, within an hour or two. It's when you
okay?
really throw it off by 3 or 4 hours. So, it's the same thing when we change time zones. If we're only going an hour, it doesn't take us much to shift to that time zone. But if we're switching between LA and New York every weekend, it just is too much for us to change. So just think of it as jet lag. You're giving yourself jet lag on the weekends.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any
So
questions?
it's a really great way to think about it.
Yeah, very.
I see,
And
asked what kind of cooling blanket, if you could share that, that'd be cool. Cool, get it?
Haha.
I am a big fan of I have rechargeable they're camping fans. Anyone who's seen us sitting in the heat at any remembrance activities has seen us with but I have one everywhere, like on every desk, everywhere. So they're
Yeah.
great.
and in lieu of medication, there's a lot of herbal teas that can help with calming and sleep too.
Hmm. Yeah, just non-caffeine ones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Dominique, you had a question.
Someone has recommended, let's see if I can lower my hand again, to kind of exert yourself a bit, like an evening walk or something, kind of the outdoors, cool breeze. Probably not more than 15 minutes or so, but sometimes I've done a walk and was able to kind of wind down within 45 minutes to an hour after that. Is
Yeah,
that like, I guess,
it's
scientific? Your body's like ready to regulate and stop, or
it is amazing, especially an after dinner walk, because that helps us burn off our dinner more quickly so that we don't have that sugar spike in our blood, and that helps us sort of calm down. But any kind of movement is going to help us release stress from our body. So a walk and being in nature or talking with someone that you don't normally connect with, or even if it's just you and you've got your favorite music on or a podcast you find interesting, those are all messages to your body that it's time to wind down, that things are safe, that things are okay. So that's going to improve the quality of your sleep in so many different ways. It's absolutely one of the best things you can do.
okay, thank you.
And just to let you know, we actually have Dr. Kennedy scheduled to come back in about 6 months, talk about the brain gut connection. So
Yes.
we won't make her talk about sleep again.
Well, it's the most important medicine. So you're right to say, let's talk about it again.
And I know for me, it's been 8.5 years since we're out. I kind of seem to go, it's like a roller coaster.
Mhm.
I'll be doing well for a while with sleep, and then all of a sudden I'm all over the place again. I'm
Yeah.
doing well, then all over the place. So it's a really good reminder that, we need to stick with it and how the importance of it, especially, it's important in general, but as we are healing from a major trauma, it's incredibly important.
Mhm. Well, I always share with the people I've worked with that healing's like a spiral. So you're every once in a while you come back and you're like, oh my God, this again, but you're a little farther away each time. And then, anniversary, oh my God, again, but you're further away each time. So it's always going to be this cycle of thoughts, healing, triggers, and then your physiological responses, sleep and things like that. So just know your body's in an active period of processing things and say, thank you, body, for doing this hard work, but I'm looking forward to going back to sleep again.
Very much so. Very much so. Okay. So continue the conversation with heart, and I know a lot of you have joined us for that. The third Tuesday of each month and the fourth Thursday. This month, the third Tuesday and fourth Thursday happen to fall in the same week. So April's fourth Thursday will be April 30th instead. Um, if anybody has not gone to on-site and they're considering going, my understanding is there's still another spot or two left. It's something that we definitely encourage. I've now done it twice. It's an amazing life-changing program. The only out-of-pocket for anyone who was physically at an incident is a $300 registration fee and transportation to the San Diego airport. Or you can drive to campus, which is in just outside of San Diego in Ramona, California. The one caveat is you must be at least 1 year post-incident. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. A lot of people on this have also gone, so please feel free to ask any questions if you have them. Next month, we have Linda Herrick joining us. We're going to be talking about From Alert to Ease, finding safety in your body again. I've been working with her for about 6 months, and she's definitely helped me, so I'm excited to have her join us. Additional support, if you'd like to be paired with a Heart Peer Mentor, you can go to resiliencyandjustice.org/heart and click on Request Heart Peer Support. The Disaster Distress Helpline has a 24/7 crisis support number. You can call or text, and this can be for anything. It doesn't have to be suicidal thoughts, anything like that. If you're awake and you're ruminating and you just need somebody to talk to, they're a good one to call because most of us are generally asleep in the middle of the night. National Mass Violence Center has some amazing information both on their website and their virtual resiliency center at massviolence.help. And they also have an amazing app. It's Transcend NMVC. Make sure if you're typing it in, you put in the NMVC because there are also other Transcend apps. So, and just a reminder, we have integrative services programs are offered through the Resiliency and Justice Center that are available to anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. These are all free. All the heart programs, there is a weekly meditation and mindfulness program on Tuesdays, and then they do once a month on a Monday. We have a trauma recovery yoga program, which is generally on Saturdays. The meditative art program is the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday of each month, and I am now leading that. And then the equine therapy demonstrations is the only in-person event that we have. All the others are virtual. If you want information or to register, please go to resiliencyandjustice.org/calendar. Real quick, here's a brief look at the calendar that can be accessed online. Any of the events on here that are not event specific are open to anyone impacted by mass violence. I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us. Hope you all have a great evening. Hope to see you at art next Tuesday and then at third Tuesdays as well. Have a great night, everyone.